Well, the first kung fu movie I ever seen really wouldn't even be a Asian one. It would probably be the first time I was aware of martial arts at all was in Billy Jack, countercultural cult movie. Still great to watch this day. It was the first movie that actually incorporated martial arts into the fight scenes. The character Billy Jack being obviously a black belt, ex Green Beret, he um, he used a style of martial arts called Hapkido, which was unknown back then. Everybody knew karate and maybe kung fu a little bit later, judo, of course. They knew that, but this guy was doing this amazing stuff. Like it was the first time I ever in my life seen somebody do a what do you call that? A reverse spinning back kick. And actually, the guy that was the major proponent of that style, Master Bong Su Han, he and I learn all this stuff just from reading credits, man. I don't like research it on the fucking internet and all that. I just learn all this stuff from reading credits and paying attention and stuff. And a lot of stuff I learn is from other magazines. Like, I mean, I just happened to buy Black Belt magazine when I was a kid, and here's an article on Bong Su Han. So that was really the first movie I got to see. However, that said, I didn't really even see the movie. I had only seen the trailers for it, which included the classic fight scene in the park where he uses all these Hapkido techniques. So that was really my first introduction to martial arts films. Um, I was probably too young for the first run, if they even first ran them here in the city. The Bruce Lee movies, like Enter the Dragon. I think they played that later than it actually was made. Another oh well, so after I seen these trailers for Billy Jack, um, I'd heard about Bruce Lee, of course. He's the most recognized name, not only now in martial arts, but he was back then too. He had just, I believe, finished making Enter the Dragon. I had heard a lot about this movie and that. And before they played that here, I had heard about it. Before they played that here, they played a film called Five Fingers of Death, which I actually went to see in the theater with my brother. And like you said, I think I pointed this out before, there was only like three people in the theater, which isn't surprising because, I mean, martial arts wasn't really a thing over here that big. I mean, like when I was a little guy, like 7 years old, just starting like early public school. I mean, guys didn't, yeah, like guys didn't kick in fights. You know what You see what I'm saying? They just they would consider that dirty fighting. They would consider using like kicks and karate chops and that. They would consider that tantamount to girl fighting because you just didn't kick when you're a guy, and never ever did you. If you kicked another guy in the balls back then, I'm just talking about when we were little guys here. But when we kicked, if you kicked somebody in the balls, like, like I mean, you would be tarred for life that you kicked somebody in the balls. But then the martial arts started to become part of the public consciousness. And so I'd seen Five Fingers of Death. I was dying to see the Bruce Lee movies. The Five Fingers of Death movie actually blew me away. And many, many years later, I was to discover that it was actually the martial arts movie that kicked that whole thing off. The martial arts movies, Five Fingers of Death. I don't even know if it's. I don't even think that was the Asian name of that. I think was like King Boxer, and they changed it to Five Fingers of Death. But having said that, when I was watching I think it was the trailer on Five Fingers of Death which was a movie called, and still I hadn't seen a Bruce Lee movie by this time. I was dying to see a Bruce Lee movie, and they just weren't playing them for some reason. So I seen a trailer for a movie called The Dragon Flies or something like that, some such title similar to that. And it turns out that the character in that, who I thought was Bruce Lee when I seen the trailer, was not Bruce Lee. It was a Bruce Lee imitator, and I didn't even know Bruce Lee had died at that point yet. That wasn't big news over here yet, especially in Canada, because nobody knew who Bruce Lee was at that point. Like I say, they didn't run those movies here in this city. They just didn't for some reason. They were probably, maybe they were box office poison over here. I don't know, but they just didn't play them. And so finally, I seen this movie. I think I'd seen some other American movies where they use martial arts in them, like maybe The Killer Elite or something like that. But finally, I think in 1975, they played Enter the Dragon. And I wanted to see that movie so bad that when it came out, I didn't walk to the theater. I ran to see Enter the Dragon. And when I seen that movie, it was just like, I mean, this movie just totally blew everybody's mind. Here's a movie by what we were later to find out was the king of martial arts, like Bruce Lee. He was a god. Bruce Lee back then, by like 1976. I don't really know what year he died. I guess it was shortly before they put Enter the Dragon out. But I mean, Bruce Lee was like a god to young people back then. He was a god in the same way as Muhammad Ali was, Evel Knievel, some of the athletes around the time. This guy was just like, I mean, there were probably shrines built to Bruce Lee back then. When he died, I'm sure there was. So Bruce Lee, there was something about his movie Enter the Dragon, as in contrast to Five Fingers of Death. Five Fingers of Death, the martial arts in it, you know, even as a little kid, I was watching this, and although me and my brother were extremely entertained by it, we looked at each other. We knew nobody could do that stuff in real life. But the Bruce Lee, the Bruce Lee movies seemed to change that. His stuff just seemed so believable, and so I seen that, and then like I said, the martial arts films were very paltry back then. There just wasn't a lot of them. There maybe be a couple of scenes in them, but there really were no. We had no consciousness of martial arts movies back then. So when I finally did discover that there were like literally hundreds of these movies made, it was like finding the keys to a treasure-filled forest. No, actually what happened was, so after Enter the Dragon, they played, everybody knows this, they changed the name of it from Way of the Dragon to Return of the Dragon. So they put it out shortly after Enter the Dragon, and I went to see it, and I even knew back then, you could just tell, like maybe I didn't have it verbalized in my mind, but when I watched Return of the Dragon, I just knew that movie was made before Enter the Dragon. You could just tell for some reason. It just wasn't as polished, or something imprinted on my young consciousness that this movie was made previously. So I'm talking about a personal history of martial arts movies. It's so easy now for people to go back and figure the histories out of films and that. But I mean, I lived it from the 1970s to when I stopped going to see movies not too long ago. We seen Enter the Dragon or Return of the Dragon. We knew it wasn't as good as Enter the Dragon, which we thought odd that somebody would put a movie that wasn't half as good after a movie that was so great. That said, I still like Return of the Dragon. I mean, that fight with Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, although it's not the greatest fight in cinema, it's too one-sided. In fact, Chuck Norris, I read an interview with Chuck Norris, and he said that if if Bruce Lee had have let him choreograph the fight, that it would have been much better. Probably the reason for that is because Bruce Lee had a tendency of staging fights where he didn't get hit. He destroyed the person in a couple moves. Yeah, so he didn't let the guy get any shots. And I mean, that fight with Chuck Norris, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love Bruce Lee. The guy's like a god to me, a son of God. But, the guy didn't know how to do fight scenes. He made a bit. He when his movies came out, he like don't get me wrong. Again, I love the guy, but when his movies came out, he made out like his movies were so realistic and that, which they were. They were more realistic than the movies like I seen like Five Fingers of Death, where guys were like jumping and flying through the air and doing all these contortionistic moves and things like that. But Bruce Lee trying to say his fights are more realistic it's ridiculous, because his movies were not more realistic. In a realistic fight, one guy's not gonna get in like two shots, and the other guy's gonna get in like eight killer shots and put the guy down like that Chuck Norris fight. So I was totally disappointed in that fight, even as, like I said, as a little guy. So then, I had heard about the other Bruce Lee movies, wanted to see them. I believe they did play them here in London after, after like his fourth or fifth movie. Wanted to see them very badly. Heard that he was working on a script for a movie called Game of Death that he died during the filming of. So before that, I was waiting for that, especially when I heard he was gonna have a fight scene with not only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar but Dan Inosanto, because I had been, as a little guy, I had been reading martial arts magazines like Black Belt Magazine and Inside Kung Fu. So I knew, I had the inside scoop. I knew who all these guys were in the movies. Like, you go see these movies with your friends, and they'd be like, "Who's that clown he's fighting right now?" And I'd be like, "That's Dan Inosanto," or "That's Chuck Norris, man. He's the karate champ of the world, or the USA, or whatever he was." So I really, after seeing Enter the Dragon, I really like Chuck Norris. You notice my history of martial arts films here is not Asian oriented, and that's because, like I've been saying for 30 years now, they did not play those movies here. They didn't. I would have went. I know, I know. I used to fucking scour the newspaper every Saturday to see what movies were playing. Me and my brother, we know what played here. You can't put anything over on us. These people who say, "Yeah, I seen all the black exploitation." Yeah, I seen all the black exploitation movies when I was younger. It's like, well, where did you see them? Here in London. No, you didn't, because they didn't play here. Um, I believe maybe the odd one played here, like Shaft played here. Uh, that's probably about it. Like, I mean, none of those Pam Grier movies played here. So I don't know why these guys, I don't know where these guys get off saying that. Are they trying to be cinema gurus or something? Well, it don't hold any water, because I'm the real deal. Okay, I was a cinema rat when I was 5 years old. My brother, the very first movie my brother took me to was The Poseidon Adventure. And I just went from there. We went to see a movie every weekend. We, 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 even then, we were very selective about the movies we watched. We wouldn't just go see anything. We wouldn't go see Sound of Music when they were still playing Bullet or the French Connect. Well, we couldn't get into those movies. But anyway, we seen the posters. We certainly seen the posters of them. I remember seeing the poster for Deliverance with the hand coming out of the water, and like that gave me nightmares. Even though I hadn't, that gave me that goes to show you the power of not only cinema but the advertising of it, like the posters and that those posters. Walking in to a cinema like the Century Theater downtown, walking in there as just a little guy, like I say, I'm 5, 6, 7 years old. Walking in there was like walking into a Martian temple on Mars. It was out of this world. It was lit up like a bonfire, light amplification. It was just amazing, and seeing those martial arts, seeing those martial arts movies posters, which were very few of them. Again, so anyway, I'm rambling here, but anyway, so I seen Five Fingers of Death. I seen Enter the Dragon. I seen Return of the Dragon. And about the next movie that came along of any value as a martial arts movie would have been Chuck Norris's first starring movie called Breaker Breaker. We went to see that, and that movie is a pure time capsule of the 70s because it encapsulates martial arts movies which were just starting to come to fore. It crosses those with trucker movies and CB radios and that. And motocross. That's another thing most people don't point out. It even has motocross in it, which was a 70s phenomenon. But I mean, watching, nothing, for some reason, Bruce Lee, maybe because his moves were so technical or something like that. I love the guy. I just didn't really. I just had the intuition as a little guy that this guy's not for real. He's Superman. It's larger than life. It's a movie I'm watching. But when I watch Billy Jack, and you believe that guy in Billy Jack could really do what he did in that fight scene in the park, and then Chuck Norris's Breaker Breaker, it just seemed more realistic. Here's a guy, he's a trucker, he's running around all over the small town, and these hicks are attacking him, and he's doing all these amazing, at the time, martial arts moves. It just blew me away. In fact, it was because of that movie that I signed up for karate lessons at the Y, which I quit after a few lessons. I don't know why, but the guy that really inspired me the most would be Chuck Norris and Billy Jack. Even though Billy Jack, the star of that film, had a stand-in, which I think I explained earlier was the guy who was most famous for the Hapkido technique. So anyway, I seen those movies, and then martial arts movies kind of went out of style for a while. There wasn't much in them. Of course, the blaxploitation movies. I don't even like using that word blaxploitation, because really blaxploitation movies are whitesploitation, because they, for some reason, reinforce what black or white people thought of black people back then. Which that's a 70s phenomenon I'm talking about, by the way. Like when that stuff was still around, the Black Panthers and all them guys. And so, anyways, as I've seen these very few martial arts movies. Like Billy Jack Canyon isn't really a martial arts movie that just features some martial arts. I noticed in the James Bond movies, watching them on TV, that I noticed, yeah, those Sean Connery and Roger Moore are doing martial arts moves in those movies. So I was cognizant of that. And I was reading all these martial arts magazines again, like learning about all these guys. And it would always mention in these magazines that some of these guys were in certain movies that I had already seen, but I didn't know about. Like one guy I read about a lot was Tak Kubota, who had his own style of karate. And I later learned a movie I had already seen, The Mechanic with Charles Bronson, that Tak Kubota was in it. And just little things like that just impressed me about the martial arts movies. But I can't really say that, although like Chuck Norris was put out a lot of action movies in the 1980s, they didn't really seem to be what you would call martial arts movies. I didn't realize that there were so many of those martial arts movies made when I was a young fellow. It just blew my mind when I was later discover in the 1980s that, yeah, like there were like tons and tons and tons of these movies, and I wanted to see them. So I sent away for some movies, and some of them I was able to catch on TV when I was a teenager. I was able to catch the odd one on TV. What was great, I finally found out that movie that I seen the trailer for. I just told you about for a movie called The Dragon Flies. It featured a Bruce Lee clone named Bruce Lee. Actually pronounced Bruce Lee, like Li, but most people pronounce it Bruce Lee because it is a lie. He's not Bruce Lee, I guess. But I searched and searched and searched for this movie, trying to find information about it. It was called The Dragon Flies, and I never heard nothing about it until just recently in the last year and a half, because of the beauty of the internet. I was able to find out that this movie was actually named The Man from Hong Kong, and was finally able to be able to watch this movie, and um, it totally blew my mind. It was the great thing about the martial arts movies weren't the martial arts movies themselves. Going back and watching this material, the martial arts movies, the chop socky movies I'm talking about, all seem to be kind of like, they're just routine. They all seem to have the same plot and everything, and I don't know. I guess I was a pretty prescient young kid because I kind of sensed that already with Asian martial arts movies. So I've preferred growing up watching other than Asian martial arts movies, which Bruce Lee's movies aren't really. Maybe his first two are, but his movies they're more Americanized, and he features real life martial artists in them, and it's just fantastic. I don't know if to this day I have seen many of the Chop Socky movies, but the few I have seen I really like. Thanks.
Yeah, that was cool. I think that was